Off to a start. Phil's dog's going crazy.
Going crazy.
Codyjoe's having some connection issues there, so
Everyone's busting out the tequila.
I'm not being technically difficult. Just trying to make sure it's working for everybody. Oop.
It looks like we may have someone there. Oh, spinning ring.
Spinning ring of doom.
Spinning ring of doom. At least
Well,
it's
I'm
not
glad
the red ring.
at least Phil's here this week.
I am. What a horrible miscommunication. My sincerest apologies to all of our friends and listeners.
I thought something had happened to you.
Nah. Hindsight, I didn't realize this, but like halfway through the 4.5-hour flight, they're like, we're now turning on the free Wi-Fi. And I was like, man, I probably could have did the show in the airplane. That would have been wild.
You were probably like, it was like in Home Alone when she realized she left Kevin at home.
No, because I told you. At least
you did not tell me. I would have remembered that.
It was brief. It was like, oh, we're gonna do this on this day, and then the following week, I'm not gonna be there because I'm gonna be on business. And you were like, okay, like that was the extent of it. But it was a while ago. So again, my sincerest apologies.
Look, Billy Jenkins cried himself to sleep that night.
How does that
make you feel?
How is that different than any other night?
It's true. Should have let you know earlier, Keller. I couldn't. I didn't know it was happening.
Yes, and thank you all. I am alive and well. I was on a plane headed to a faraway land for business, not pleasure. Hey, there we go. We got some video action.
Is it cooperating for you?
I see him, but it's definitely frozen.
Smitty refuses to ask any of the B team to jump in. Well, usually I just assume everyone's like busy. Like it's kind of hard to ask somebody, hey, it's 9:00 on a Monday, hop in for 2 hours, and it's like,
yeah,
nah, I'm asleep. It's bedtime.
Jeff Frederick said we need a podcast over international waters on an international flight. That would be pretty awesome. I bet you the connection would be amazing for whatever reason, just because it's not when we're sitting at our homes.
Dude, I was legit looking into getting Starlink to switch to that from Hargray.
Really?
And it's not any more expensive than what we're paying for now. You just got to pay like $600 for the satellite dish and all that equipment.
Oh, geez.
But my aunt and uncle had it out in the middle of Tennessee in the middle of nowhere, and it worked amazing.
Really?
Yes.
Have you ever seen the Starlink chain fly overhead?
No.
I have. It was pretty awesome. It's scary because you're like, oh my God, look at all those UFOs interconnected. It's a dotted line across the sky. That's unnatural. And then you're like, oh, wait, no. It's just Tesla.
It's just Elon.
It's just Elon.
Flying around.
Flexing. But yeah, I was in the lower Nevada area for business. It was 50 degrees Fahrenheit. It had rained as I got there. So I was like, all right, this was Monday night. Tuesday night, I had the opportunity to do some light herping around a rural clubhouse, if you will, just like your neighborhood clubhouse. And there was one area that was like wet. Like when you put your foot down in the sand, it was like wet sand. And I was like, this is great. It's 50 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 10 degrees Celsius. The amphibians are going to be on the move. I had like Nipper in my corner hyping me up. He's like, you'll find them. Desert toads, blah, blah, blah. Dude, not a single thing was moving. And I think had I come out like maybe an hour after the rain or maybe an hour before the rain, I would have been money. But where I was,
nothing but a batch of hepatitis on the toilet seat.
Pretty much. So yes.
Well, I'm calling this one episode 192 redo because I don't think the 30 minutes last week counts. So
fair enough.
This is episode 192 again, proper. Of Snakes and Stogies, brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. You need a rack. You need a cage. Do some shopping. Tax season's coming up. We've already filed, so I'm looking forward to that. I think we're going to go ahead and put it towards bills. Yay. Shop around. You're in the market for a new rack or a new cage. Hop on blackboxcages.com. Take a look around at what they have to offer, all the customizable options, add-ons, that stuff. And then use the code THN at checkout if you end up getting yourself something nice. Get 10% off your order. And save on shipping if you're in the general North Georgia area. There's a pickup option, so you can drive and pick up from BlackBox direct. They have an actual shop warehouse kind of deal. They're not operating out of their house or anything, so it's not weird. They have a location that they're actually working out of, so it's pretty cool. So give them a look. Fullviceapparel.com. Use the code THN at checkout as well on there and get 15% off your order. That is the exclusive promo code just for THN listeners and viewers like you. I got some orders going out tomorrow. I got that Calliofish shirt up. I've been pretty busy uploading some designs and stuff.
You've been a busy boy.
So if you haven't gone and looked at some of the new offerings, which I need to figure out how to have my Shopify store sort of automatically have the new stuff on the homepage, and sort of cycle things out randomly. I need to figure that out because without that, you have to sort of dig to find the newer stuff. So I'm going to look into that. I don't know when I'll have time to do that because I was also told today, someone emailed me after they placed an order saying the checkout, when you do that, it doesn't tell you what sizes you got, like what sizes are in your order and some other sort of weird stuff that I need to look into. So that may be a project for tomorrow afternoon when I get home from work. But otherwise, orders going out. It's all good. Definitely get a booth at Daytona, says Jeff Frederick.
Oh, yeah. I
called Phil and talked to him a little bit and talked to Billy a little bit about sort of figuring that out. And I think we are good to go. Look at
I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
We got 2 more sponsors real quick.
Perfect.
Which is
that was a little worried there.
What's that?
I was a little worried that computer wasn't going to work there.
Nice. We see you and hear you.
Cold-blooded caffeine. Check them out.
Pinky's up.
I did change the code. What did I change it to? I think I used the code Smitty. I think I changed it to Smitty. Just right there, SMITTY. I was like, at first I was like, let me use Stogie, but then people are going to try and spell it with an A and it's not going to work. And just trying to make it simple. So,
Sure.
Best coffee around. You won't regret it. I got this bag right here. It's next to Stogie's blend.
There it is.
London. The good stuff. With the Chlorechis on the label. So check that out. Shop our stuff, all the other stuff on coldbloodedcaffeine.com. And then Jeff and Kendra in the Pacific Northwest, Puget Sound Pythons. They're still rocking and rolling with that ultrasound machine, man. They're posting pictures constantly in the group chat about this female's about to be ready to go. This one's got a lot going on. It's wild.
Yeah, for sure. Faux show.
Anything new in the last 2 weeks?
Everything was chilling, and I do mean that in the literal sense. It wasn't a legitimate brumation or hibernation, but the room got down into the 60s, so that was very promising. And I didn't feed stuff for about 2 months, and I was like, all right, cool. It's getting warmer. It's going to hit the 70s. It hit 75 in the room. I was like, all right, time to feed stuff. I fed everything. What's today? Today's Monday. I fed everything Friday night, and now it's 50 degrees again. So the room is at 68 right now. So hopefully it stays like that all evening. I actually kicked up some heat lamps, and I have the Gila Monster on it's not a dimmer switch, but it basically does the amount of, it's a dimmer switch. Let's just call it what it is. It's a dimmer switch for heat and I just cranked that sucker up. So hopefully that'll raise the room temp a little bit, and nothing will throw up. Knock on wood.
Joe said it got cold today. South Florida cold. Sorry.
Yeah. There you go. Good catch, Boca Joe.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of cold, Smitty, did you raise everything up like you said you were gonna?
Yeah. Everything's been up for a while now. I actually tried out. So the week before, I think we talked about that. I'd fed livers to some stuff like chicken liver.
Yeah.
And got pretty good success with that. Well, I decided to try gizzards over the weekend and got a lot of success with that.
Excellent.
Stuff went absolutely crazy. The Bairds ate it. The Leonis ate it, which was really surprising because I was sure the Leonis weren't going to go for it.
And yours were only eating boiled pinks?
No, mine were eating frozen thawed, no problem.
Oh, okay, cool.
I just didn't expect them to go for the gizzards because it's sort of pretty far removed from what they're usually eating.
Yeah, for sure.
And even the chondros, I didn't think the chondros wouldn't take it. They'll take just about anything at this point.
Yeah.
But corns, like I think every corn I offered it, minus one or two took it. Whether I fed it to them direct or drop fed. Most of the Baird's babies took, and then I didn't try with any of the rhinos or anything, but I mean, for $2.84, getting a bucket of gizzards that, usually has a couple hearts in there too.
Yeah.
And then I got a small cutting board from Dollar Tree and a knife and just sliced it and made it, strip like, and then that's what I fed baby corns and everything else. And
how much of a mess was it actually feeding?
The livers, it was a nightmare. The
Okay.
livers, it was a real pain in the ass.
popped.
Gizzards were way different. Gizzards were light years easier because it's a lot firmer.
Right.
Not nearly as messy, for sure. But what I did too is that when I went to Dollar Tree, I picked up some more of those deli cups that I like to use, those little green lidded ones.
Yeah.
And for the babies, I would just put the babies in the deli cup with a piece, of gizzard, and then put that in the container they're in, and then snap the lid on, and then I'd stack them. And then by the time I got to the bottom of that stack, I'd just go back through and see who finished, and just let them out of those cups. And that was sort of a good way as far as saving time.
Did you leave the cups in their tubs
until they finished eating?
Yeah. But I'm saying you didn't like stack them all up on the counter or anything.
No, so I keep track of who's supposed to be going where.
Cool,
I didn't want to get them mixed up, but
yeah,
man, everything was all about some gizzards, and I did some Googling as far as sort of which is healthier, be it livers or gizzards, and both are jam-packed full of nutrients and stuff. Gizzards are supposedly, from what I was reading, one of the healthiest organ meats, packed with a ton of different vitamins and minerals and things like that. But they are high in cholesterol, which I'm curious now, cholesterol-wise with herps, does that really matter? Is that really a thing?
right.
And I need to look through the Mater book to see if there's anything about that in there, because I am genuinely curious now if you feed a lot of livers or gizzards, do they get cholesterol issues? Like, is that a problem? So
Sure.
we'll see. But that was nice. It's not gonna take over and be like the primary diet by any means, but to have something that I can sort of pad the mice load with and stuff, it is good. So
just augment the variety.
That's right.
Excellent.
Cholesterol is a key ingredient for testosterone. If that's the case, then I should be the manliest man around. What are you smoking tonight?
I went digging through the humidor and I forgot I had one of these, but I always say La Crema.
La Carême.
La Carême.
Yeah. Good, dude. I had one of those a couple weeks ago. Oh, it was good.
Yeah, man. Haven't had one in a long time. I bought like 3 or 4, I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago. And dude, it's perfect. So, and yourself?
So I think I am coming down with something that is floating through my household right now. So my throat
it's going
kind of on fire today, but I said to hell with it. It's not going to stop me. I tried one of these CAO Amazon basins.
I heard that was all right.
Oh my God.
Really?
Legit one of the best cigars I've ever had in my life.
Excellent, because I'm not a big CAO guy, but
I
yeah.
like most CAOs are pretty good. These phenomenal. This is just it's a 5-leaf blend, so it's got 5 leaves from 5 different areas in the blend. Colombian, Brazil, Nicaraguan, Ecuadorian, Sumatra, and what was the other one? I think a Habano, if I'm not mistaken.
Hopefully nothing of the Amazon.
Yeah, so it's really freaking good. It's really bizarre. Kind of has, like, people have described it as kind of like a peanut butter and jelly type sort of flavorishness to it, which it does have. It has kind of that weird sweet and savory thing going on.
Nice.
At the same time, it's very unique, and I think that 5, that blend itself is obviously going to give you something different. So
excellent.
If you see them, grab one.
Let me see the band.
Very good. It's not really a band. It's like a Blair Witch.
Oh, that's cool.
Crown of Thorns type thing. I haven't tried smoking through it yet, but I might tonight. I was brave enough to do it the other night when I smoked it. So
very cool.
We'll see, but yeah, I'm hoping I can still enjoy some of it, even with my sinuses being kind of obliterated right now.
It's that time of year, man. Everyone's got something they're choked up on. So, well, speaking of it being cold out, I think it's about time we introduce our guest, who is moving and not frozen and crystal clear. So, Smitty, would you care to do the honors? After you light your face on fire.
Whew. So Codyjoe here, came highly recommended from our buddy Michael Gillen. He is a fellow Canadian up there in the Great White North. I don't know how under snow you guys are right now, because Gillen's like west coast, right? And you're sort of more Calgary, right? Which is more
pretty much. I'm like an hour out of Calgary, hour and a half.
I got you.
Yeah, we're good now. Like a week and a half ago with wind chill, we were minus 55.
I can't fathom it. Like, I can't even imagine what that feels like. That's like, because Olson was sending me screenshots, and he's like negative 20 and stuff in Minnesota, and I'm like, dude, I literally couldn't even tell you what that felt like. I have no idea.
Is wild.
Yeah, she hurts to breathe when you go out there.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, just for everyone who is chilly, my current temperature is, and Boca Joe, you don't count, 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Feels like 54, and it is 69% humidity. So I'm very sorry, everyone.
Yeah, it's like 47 here right now. So.
I'm like 7 Celsius right now.
Whoa.
It's warm right now. I got the door open. I'm sweating.
Nice. Let's say he's wearing a t-shirt. He can't be that cold.
Yeah, the shop's pretty damn hot. Yeah.
Nice.
Sean McCarthy's in Central Ontario.
Oh, really?
Ontario. I don't.
Yeah, Ontario. Yeah.
Ontario. Yeah.
Tomato.
Same thing.
Yeah. Only if you're in Quebec.
They got their own federal.
I thought that was called Quebec.
Quebec? What's that little boot? All right, I'm done with the Canadian jokes. So, Codyjoe, man, herpetological jack of all trades, like crazy critters, man. And don't you dare think we're going to do a single. How do I phrase this? We're talking about stingrays tonight at some point, whether you like it or not.
Fair.
But yeah, man. Why don't you give yourself a little introduction? My apologies.
Yeah. Obviously, my name's Codyjoe. I own a little shop called the Reptile Shop in Red Deer, Alberta, Canada, obviously. The shop has only been a recent thing of like the last 4 years. But previous to that, I've been breeding and doing expos for like the last 21 years, I think. Work with a little bit of everything. I like the oddball stuff, like all the obscure pythons and boas. I do a lot of monitor lizards. I've pretty well done anything in between, like I do some of the more common stuff for the shop, like beardies and all that. I bred all that other stuff, leopard geckos, cresties, corns, all of that. Yeah, if it's reptiles, I like it. Or animals, really.
Yeah. I mean, what was the sort of to go from getting into the hobby, being in the hobby for a while, and then deciding to do the storefront thing? Sort of what was the timeline with that, though?
Like 3 weeks. Mine was a little unconventional. Me and my girlfriend at the time, we were living in Calgary, working at a store there, and we were kind of humming and hawing about making like maybe like a 5-year plan to do a shop and save some money. And then we had an investigator from the city come to the house one day, and it was in regards to breeding stingrays in the garage, because we had a double car garage that I had turned into a fish room. And it was about that. And then when I answered the door, he's seen the reptile operation. And I guess, I don't know, technically it was business. So they wanted us to apply for like what's called a class 2 land permit.
Mm-hmm.
And it would enable you to use up to 20% of the square footage of the house for a business. And it would fall under the same thing as like a kennel would.
Okay.
But I was already using like 95% of the house and the whole garage. So it wouldn't get approved. And then they wanted us to just keep paying like $500 to reapply in hopes of it getting approved. And we were renting, and the guy we were renting from was just a property manager. And he obviously didn't want the owner to know that he rented it to us with all the animals. So he told me to forge a letter of permission to the city.
Wow.
So the whole thing was just not going to happen.
Wow.
So we kind of just, like, I had always been looking at Red Deer because I always seen posts. Like, there's nothing in Red Deer. There's pretty much no breeders, no stores. And it's right in between Edmonton and Calgary. So people are always looking for somebody to deliver stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at buildings, and like, we honestly didn't even have any savings at the time or anything. So I found a building, and we just scrounged up whatever money we could, took our last paychecks from the pet store, and then secured this building. And then I happened to, when we were looking for somewhere to live, the landlords to this building actually had another ad. And I went on like this Google satellite imaging, and I looked out the window, and it was the same street view. So I realized it was on top of the shop. And then we ended up getting just the entire building and moving out here. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, I just used I had like 50 exoterras I was using for tree boas. And I used all of those for the store, and then put the tree boas in tubs, and then just kind of like flipped from there. So it's a little unconventional. So I don't know how to do it the proper way, but
hey man, it worked, you know?
Yeah, I'm living.
That's great. What's in the background behind you?
That is Varanus molinis,
Nice.
monitors. There's a male up top, and then I think the females, up top on the other side.
Very cool, man. Hell of an enclosure. Are those display animals, or are those for sale?
Those are display. That's a breeding pair.
Okay.
Actually, just the other day, I put Universal Rock on that side, and then next Thursday, I'm gonna do the other side. Get it all done up, look a little nicer. But that's a breeding pair. Those suckers produce a lot.
Nice. None of people are doing Molinas.
No, like none of the Indicus complex really, which is a shame because they're cool.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're just big enough, but not too big.
Yeah, and in Alberta we can't have water monitors or croc monitors or anything. The biggest thing that we can have here is black throats, and then I guess technically we can have coming eye or kamingi, however you want to.
Okay.
Coming eye.
Still awesome.
Now, as far as, because it seems like the Canada overall, from everyone I've talked to that lives up there and keeps herps, and I mean that's not a ton of people, but it seems like it's fairly strict, but it seems to be so much more of like a local government thing over like provincial. Is that I don't like the provinces themselves don't seem to be necessarily as strict, but it's like the cities that some people are living in are much more strict about that stuff.
So here, for the most part in Alberta, it's pretty well straight across the board. You get the odd place that, like a small little hick town, might have its own little bylaw, no boas or something. But out east, I know it's a lot different. Like, you can have a city where you can't have retics, and then guys will have a facility 30 minutes out of town, and they have retics.
Yeah.
But Alberta's pretty much just across the board. You either can or you can't.
Okay.
And what were they wanting to know about the stingrays when they showed up initially?
They wanted money.
Were they worried about like an invasive species kind of concern, or like?
No, they just wanted me to pay for a business license and to pay for the land permit. But at that time, it wasn't a big operation. Like, it was like I had a 450-gallon tank and 300-gallon tanks, and my stingrays had babies, and I sold the first litter on Codyjoe. And I tried to explain that to them, but then they got me on the Reptile thing, and they're like, well, do you have a Facebook page? Do you have business cards? I'm like, well, yeah. But the Calgary was doing it weird, because I always thought that it was if you made a certain amount, if you had a certain income from it.
Mm-hmm.
But for them, it was like, apparently, if you had more than 3 of that animal and 1 litter a year, then you're a business, I guess. So
Really?
yeah. And then the stingrays were a little bit different than guppies, apparently. So
Wild.
yeah, I don't know.
Government's always got to wet their beak, man.
They like to leave it vague on purpose, man.
Of course.
Like
Of
we see it down here all the time with the legislations and stuff that pop up. Like they leave a lot of gray area in there to where it's like whatever works best for them is what they're going to roll with. You know,
They do it with dogs too.
Oh, I'm sure.
If it's muscular and has short hair, then it could be, a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I worked for the better anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great, man. That's something that could have gone really south, and it blossomed into something great. So that's good.
Yeah, that way it was like 3 weeks we hummed and hawed, and then we found a building, and then me and my ex went into our job of 9 years at the time, and then just gave our notice. I'm like, all right, I guess we're doing it. Didn't even know anybody in Red Deer.
Sometimes that's the best way to do it, man.
Yeah.
But there must be, a good amount of people keeping herps and stuff there, because obviously you couldn't open a storefront necessarily and be able to keep it rolling if you didn't have enough of a customer base. So what's that sort of?
Oh yeah. So you got, there's that small handful of like what I would consider like true hobbyists that have got big collections and stuff. Like I could, probably think of maybe 5 people. And the rest is kind of your typical, like, we want to get a reptile.
Much more casual.
Look good. Yeah. So I'm like kind of filling the same spot as like Petland would in terms of the store. But then I have a lot of big displays in the store. I've got, I think like 80 something tanks in the shop. So everybody likes to come in and just look around, and then they get into it and it escalates. But most of the kind of more rare, expensive stuff, that's all shipped out east. Most of that doesn't sell here. Maybe at an expo, but not in Red Deer.
Yeah.
So is the shop mostly reptiles and amphibians, or is it mostly aquatics?
Mostly reptile. Honestly, nobody even sees the rays unless they know me or they catch me on the spot and like, can I please see the stingrays? I have no aquariums in the actual storefront, but I have it's around 6,700 square feet.
Nice.
And then the shop itself, the shop itself is only 1,000 square foot.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an incredible back area, man. That's a lot of space.
Oh, I know. Yeah. It's, 2 levels of animals. And then I live on the top, which I try not to have too many animals in there, but
yeah. Famous last words.
Yeah. You can never have too many quarantine rooms.
Yeah. Right.
Jeff Frederick said he's curious to know what inventory most supports the business. You know, is it dry goods? Is it animals? Is it a pretty even split?
Feeders.
Feeders?
100% feeders. Yeah.
Are you doing those yourself too?
No. Well, I have a rodent room, but mainly to supply myself with like fresh pinkies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I often, since I cut it in half because the stingrays kept taking space, often I'll end up having to order in live still, just to fill the demand. Because there's a lot of people in the surrounding towns out here that get live from me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for sure, feeder insects is like all day long, steady, and substrate. Feeders and substrate, really. And then, you know, you get your typical bread and butter, bearded dragons, leopard geckos. All of that is really what keeps it going. And then on the off season, like when the store is slow, is when all the stuff that I produce is kind of ready to go and ship out. So if the store is slow, then all my personal sales really ramp up and I'm shipping stuff out. So that's where my particular situation works well for me.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a local shop here that has closed down temporarily. So they say, I don't know, but I didn't realize how many people were buying rodents from them until people started posting in the groups, the local groups, saying, I need feeder rodents. And I breed my own, but I don't have enough to really support a ton of people with it. And they all want mediums and they're all for ball pythons. And
Yeah.
I don't have any of that right now.
Yeah. And are you breeding rats or mice too, or
both NASFs?
Oh yeah, so you got the works.
But I don't know. I'm down to my last group of mice because I had a pretty gnarly crash with some of the weather and stuff we had here recently, and I'm down to like one group. So I don't. Those might be gone here in the near future. I'm not sure, but we'll see.
Yeah,
hoping they'll bounce back.
In Alberta, we can't even have rats.
Really?
Yeah. Just ASFs and mice.
Which is so bizarre because, like, in Georgia, which is, I mean, I'm in South Carolina, Phil's in Florida, so Georgia's, nestled right there. Like, you're not allowed to have ASFs. Georgia has all kinds of goofy rules, but it's just it is. Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with like the tegus and stuff, where people think that if people have them, they're going to get loose and take over and be falling out of the trees. And
yeah.
I don't know. But what is the as far as sort of the ratio of stuff you're producing to like imported stuff? How's that played out?
I have been trying to stop getting imported stuff. I mainly, I guess starting in 2013 is when I was getting tons of imports. But it was mainly to build my own personal collection. And then I've almost built the dream collection now. There's just a few more species I need. So I'm pretty much try to avoid it. Yeah, and then in the shop, I'll carry stuff like, anoles or mountain horn dragons and stuff like that. But otherwise, I try and source it all out captive bred. Even a lot of those weird niche species. It's better that way. I still bring like flying snakes and stuff like that here and there.
Right.
But for the most part, I've been trying to avoid it. It's just a headache, really.
Yeah. I mean, you think about the sheer numbers you've got to get, and then sort of I guess you kind of do have to do the math and be like, okay, if I'm getting 50 animals, I can expect X to not make it. And then, this many to just not take off over a longer period of time. And then finally I'm left with a core group that do get established and seem to be okay. And
and it's
a numbers game.
I'm definitely not the guy to bring them in and unpack them and throw them up for sale in the store either. I put them in quarantine and I deal with them and get them in shape and everything. So yeah, it's just not worth it really. And it's kind of sad because half the time it's like a wild caught animal that comes in just to be a pet, to not reproduce, not do anything, just drug around the house all day, So that kind of bothers me too.
That is something that I do think about. That kind of is also a bummer. You know, these animals get plucked and then they get shipped and then they make it to, you know, wherever their final destination is, only to roll, you know, a month or 3 months later, and it sucks. But you know, there's some species that handle it better than others. But you know, it is what it is. It's just finding the right people to be able to get them going.
Yeah, for sure. People want to see the dog.
What's that?
People want to see the dog. It's in the group chat. They're demanding to see the canid.
Come here, Scooch. There's two of them, but this is the one that's being a little turd.
And earlier you made like a little, oh, look at that. Look at that.
Got Scooch?
The smushiest face.
Yeah, we got the pair of them.
So much smush.
All right, you come up to you. All right. And there's the other one.
Dog's bigger than you, boy.
You know, the funny thing is their head only comes to the bottom of my knee.
That's great.
All right, pal. Cool.
Earlier in the group chat, I guess you had made like a hey, like a little like be good, you know, symbol to the dog.
Oh yeah.
And somebody chimed in like, let's see the dog, and I was thinking, man, I really hope that's not his significant other.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm gonna put in my ear. Come here. Wow.
That's great, man. That's good.
Did I tell you we got another dog?
You got another dog?
We did.
I've been out of the group chat so much. Did you put it in the group chat?
Yeah, it's been like 2 weeks.
Is it a puppy or another adult?
No, she's like 2 years old.
Nice. Excellent. Good for you, man. Congrats.
She fits in well.
Excellent. And how's the cat handling it?
Not great.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
Cat.
She's inside, probably sleeping. Otherwise, I would.
That's awesome.
She'd hog the whole chair.
What kind of dog you got?
She's some sort of a mix. I think she's got some beagle in her and probably some pit, because at this point, I think just about everything does.
Yeah.
But she was a rescue. We got her from the local shelter. Had a foster family that had her, so we found her. And I told Katie, I was like, let's get her, because we had been talking about getting another one before Christmas and stuff, but we decided to wait until after because we were going to be out of town and didn't want to leave, you know, a new dog in the house and not know what they're going to do to everything, and you know, that thing. So
for sure.
As far as the imports, something I was, you know, curious about with that is sort of your protocol for treatment and how that varies between things like varanids and snakes and everything else. You know, how long are you waiting to treat them for a while? Is it completely species dependent? You have sort of a game plan with various sort of genre or species in general?
Yeah. I wait for everything. I don't treat anything internally right away. I find they'll just crash. It's too much for them. For me, typically, anything that I bring in, usually what I do with the imports, I pretty much do this with anything that I get from any breeders too. First thing for me, like wherever I'm working, like I lay out, I've got those 1,500-foot rolls of blank white newsprint. I'll cover the whole area with it. And then I get bins of just water. And then I unpack everything, stick it in the water, and completely dispose of all the packaging as I'm going. And then I'll let them soak in there for a couple hours. And they'll drink, like they'll chug the whole time. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I'll add like some Dawn dish soap. After they've been in there for an hour or two and drank what they're going to drink, I'll add the dish soap. And that's mainly to handle mites. I find, especially like imports are going to drink, especially if you're dealing with stuff like vine snakes and like that. You can't even spray them, right? Mm-hmm. So I've gotten away from using I know everybody in Canada, and I believe it's similar elsewhere. I use like the Nix cream rinse for head lice.
Yeah.
But I notice half the time these things are just chugging any liquid that goes near them.
Yeah.
So I've moved over to the Dawn, and then I treat the enclosures. Like everything goes on white paper. And then I treat the enclosure with prevenamite.
Mm-hmm.
And I treat everything, like the whole racks, everything. And often I'll try and keep them in containers with lids. And if it's smaller stuff, like often I find smaller arboreal stuff comes with a lot of mites.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll use something with a really good sealing lid, and then I'll just have the ventilation in the top, and you can use like double-sided tape around the ventilation. So if you get mites that come out, they at least stick to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just will repeat that probably like once a week at least, usually a couple times a week, depending what it is, or if there's like a known issue or not.
Right.
And that's kind of my go-to for the first while, like until I get them feeding and everything. I usually don't worry about internal stuff till, well, it really depends what it is. But it's a long while after. It's usually no more or no less than a month, like bare minimum a month. But it usually ends up being multiple months. I want to get them feeding and just adjusted. I keep them really isolated. Like pretty much all my personal stuff only ever sees me. They might see one or two other people ever. And that's pretty well how I do it. In terms of internal stuff, like I was always dealing with things like fenbendazole, flagyl, praziquantel for tapeworms and stuff. But now in Canada, it's next to impossible to get medications. And even my just left Canada. So now for me, I pretty much, any of that stuff, I have to take it to the vet, which I currently haven't really decided on a new vet that I would like to use.
It's a tough decision these days.
Yeah, and in Canada, there's not a lot of like, especially in my end, and in Ontario, I think it's a little better. Not much experience, like, so
it's not just Canada, man.
yeah, right. You bring something, you're like, oh, I've never seen this before. Like, you know, I've been asked, you know, like on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate this thing's body condition? Because I don't know what this is. It's like, well, I mean, I'm paying you for the exam, like,
right?
Let me tell you,
trade me.
Yeah. So now that end of it is kind of difficult, which is also part of why I try and avoid it at this point. But on average, like things like little frogs and stuff like that, if I'm bringing it in, I'll often keep it for a month, maybe 2 months or whatever. But quite often it's too early to do all that internal stuff.
Right.
So if it's really healthy and doing well, like, I mean, that could be on the new purchaser, right? There'll never be anything external from me. Like I always will clean any of that up before it ever goes anywhere outside of my quarantine rooms.
Right.
But it really just depends. Yeah, for my personal animals, I take it easy. Like emeralds and stuff, I'll usually quarantine for 12 to 18 months before they come anywhere near my collection. So I take it really slow with my personal stuff.
Excellent.
What's been the biggest struggle with those? Because I know a lot of people here, I mean, it's so hit or miss. Like, you know, Casey Cannon's a good example. He got some emeralds and, you know, they would do great for him and then they'd just start to have issues. And it's like, as soon as that ball started rolling downhill, it was a disaster. So where those been?
For me, emeralds are a nightmare compared to like green trees and stuff. Like I've heard people say the opposite, but for me, a green tree is like a ball python. They just seem to do well. But emeralds, I think it's just this severe dehydration they go through because it's like a chameleon in snake form, you know, like they got to stay hydrated. Otherwise they're done. I think a lot of it has to do with hydration, to be honest. But I noticed like even last year I took a gamble and I brought in some fresh imports from a wholesaler. They showed up. And it was kind of typical wholesaler thing. I'm like, can you send me pictures of them? Like it's for a breeding situation. Like I want to make sure I'm getting good ones. Nothing. And then they show up and it's like, one had a bit of body weight. The other two were super skinny. Their heads were sunken in. Like, one immediately puked. The other one puked a couple weeks after it ate. It started puking. And then the third one did okay for a while. It, had probably 4 or 5 meals and then started puking. And those animals were completely isolated. Like, the 3 of them were in the same room. No other animals in that room. Like, it was a spare bedroom in my apartment. But those animals were in bags shipped together in the same box. You know what I mean? They were probably in tubs together with the wholesaler. So the regurg has been the number one issue for me with fresh wild caught emeralds. And I honestly feel like a lot of it, like, because you hear all kinds of stuff like chlamydia and crypto and all this. But I find the really well hydrated ones don't seem to have as much of an issue. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of it personally has a lot to do with how dehydrated they get along the way.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I've heard the avian chlamydia thing, and it's I'm sure that's obviously a thing, but it's like, is it a thing with every single import that comes in? That's probably a question for Dr. Booth, I'm sure, but it's like, is it? I think that kind of becomes one of those things where, like, that's people's first assumption, and then it becomes sort of the standard for, oh, it's regurging, it must be avian chlamydia. Like, what else would it be? And
I've tried to have that dealt with, like, in a precautionary way with imports here, and pretty much every vet that I've asked out here just says, just keep good quarantine protocol. I'm like, well, I would like to just know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that hasn't worked too well for me. But the emeralds, honestly, I'm really trying to avoid. Like, I'm at the point with all my arboreals where I'm just trying to hold back anything that I produce and then just build it up from there.
Yeah.
Although I do need to find some more male emeralds.
Lisa asked earlier if you do any exporting to the U.S.
I mean, I would like to. I would really like to, especially with some of these monitors, because I'm a little overrun sometimes. It's just so expensive. Like, I looked into exporting Apodora somewhere to Europe, I believe, and it was going to be like $3,000, like $1,500 on each end. So if
you're referring to airfare or just like fees in Canada and export taxes?
Totally. Like for CITES, for the shipping, everything in general. And so what I would like to figure out, I would love to find a way to do group shipments and arrange, whether it was to somebody who is doing for resale or to like a group of people who are chipping in. I would like to start doing exports. You get, 6 to 10 guys even, and that really breaks it down to a manageable level.
For sure.
I'm not opposed to it, for sure.
Now, on the Apodora, how many animals was that?
That was for one animal. Somebody just wanted one snake.
Wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't worth it, right? Like, I was selling the snake. Well, I was selling them for 2,000 Canadian.
Okay.
Which really drops anywhere else, but.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like someone who's started doing that with corns is Wire Forest Reptiles. He's in the UK, but he started shipping stuff in bulk to Elizabeth Nash in Texas, and she sells, and I'm assuming it's like a consignment kind of thing they have going on, but they've now set it up to where I think like once or twice a year he sends her a box full of corn snakes, like a sizable box, so that it's worth the effort and money of shipping things. That's how they started doing it. And what Jeff was saying too is Dawn, I think, does a similar thing with Casey here in Georgia, where they have like bulk shipments of sorts just to make it worth the work.
Yeah,
that would be nice. Yeah, like, because the market for a lot of the stuff that I work with is not huge here. Like, sometimes it'll take me 2 years to sell a clutch or a litter of something.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that are, obviously it's way easier now because we have, Facebook and Google and the internet and all that jazz. But a long time ago, it was you pay for your own shipment and you commiserate with your friend as to what you want and what you want them to send. So, for example, if I had a friend in Johannesburg and I said, hey, I want a bunch of captive bred baby bittis, and they go, all right, cool. Well, I want a box of captive bred diamondbacks and corn snakes. And the money was almost irrelevant because both sides had the desired species that they wanted, whether it was for their own personal collection or resale. So each of you just paid your respective airfare and CITES, whatever, and it wound up being like $1,200 each because the animals weren't part of the ticket,
Mm-hmm.
So if you have that opportunity where you are breeding a bunch of stuff, and let's say you have someone in the UK or Germany or the Netherlands, and you're communicating with them, or Sweden, and you say, all right, my buddy in Sweden's got a bunch of white lip pythons and I've got some Apodora, let's swap, animals for animals, and you figure out what would be fair, and then you're just paying the money that goes into the actual transport.
Yeah, that would be the ideal way to do it. Larger numbers.
Yeah.
I did send some Bairds to Gillen though last year, the year before. I think it was earlier last year, and that was surprisingly painless because I was fully expecting it to be way more work than it actually was. And I mean, that's a non-CITES species, so
yeah, that's a big deal.
Pretty straightforward, but I had no idea that it was that simple, and actually really price wise wasn't that much more.
Who did you do it through?
Reptiles Express.
Oh, yeah.
Canada. So we have Reptiles Express here, but then there's a one in Canada that's Reptiles Express as well. And I thought they were the same company. They just had like Big Mike at Reptiles Express had just figured out some way to have like a Canadian version, but they're two separate entities entirely, which I didn't realize until I done more research. But yeah, it was really straightforward. So.
Yeah, that's not too. Yeah, they make it easy. But the CITES is kind of tax on.
Yeah.
Everything that I keep the CITES, but.
Yeah.
Is there any country or locality that, in your experience, the government has been less accommodating?
No, mainly for the fact that I don't do any of the importing.
Okay.
Yeah, I always tack on. So I don't really have to deal with any of those difficult logistics.
Fair enough.
Apparently, there's like I've seen the issues in Indonesia, but that's all secondhand. So.
Right. I just know that because, like, in the States, our U.S. Fish and Wildlife, obviously each state in the U.S. has their own rules and regs, but U.S. Fish and Wildlife has particular animals and or particular countries of origin, regardless whether it was captive bred somewhere else. They have a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a law. It's a recommendation to not allow those things to come in. So it depends on who's at the port that day.
Mm-hmm. I recently, I don't know if you would consider it searched, but basically I've had my whole facility searched, I think 3 times in the last 6 months.
Really?
Where I got to open every cage, give them the Latin name. They would like phone numbers and names of who I got it from and when I got it from and how I got it and this and that. And it's kind of been the same. I'm like, well, I was already in Canada. So, and they're like, well, I'm like, okay, so what do I do? Do I have to? And they're like, well, no, it's just good protocol. And I thought, well, I got it off Kijiji. So I don't know. Things been floating around for 10 years.
And for those of us who don't know what Kijiji is, you mind explaining that one?
It's, to be honest, I thought you guys had it too. It's just like online, like your typical like buy and sell bargain finder, like
Canadian
all
Craigslist.
categories, car.
Yeah, Canadian Craigslist.
It is. It's Craigslist. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's like so many people get animals off there. But yeah, that's the only thing I've really experienced like that. They've gone through my stuff a lot, and like, where did this come from? Where did that guy get it from? Where did that guy get it from? And then you kind of ask what the goal is, and why? Yeah. There's no particular goal.
I think it goes back to them needing to wet their beak, and they want to know who they're going to tax next or who they're going to look at next, and all about that power and control, man.
Yeah, they got to know.
They got to know.
So. That's what I don't understand, especially with stuff like that. And then in Florida, it's like, there's no way there's enough money in this to make this worth your while to, like, do you not have bigger things to be worried about? Like, is there nothing else more important going on?
Or is it that they can't catch the big fish, but if they catch enough little fish?
Yeah, they're looking for
more with a cast net than you can a fishing pole.
There you go.
Yeah, you just deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty good. Like, I try and cooperate and just like, all right, let me show you everything.
Yeah.
Changed.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, that's going to be probably the best way to stay on their good side in terms of cooperation, and them realizing after so many searches that you're not up to anything shady.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the opposite. I'm trying to breed all the stuff that people are importing so that you don't have to import it. So, like the last guy to be searching.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it must be pretty difficult though to get a lot of that stuff up there though, because I know I've heard there's a lot of species people want in Canada, and they're not there because no one's brought them in, or maybe there were some people that were breeding them at one point or another, but they just don't have them anymore, and they kind of just fade into oblivion. So how's that?
It is tough. So I noticed, like, you guys seem to have, a lot of like big importers that are constantly bringing in, say, Indo, right? Whereas here, I can think of like two. One is a wholesaler that has a pet store. And so that's not something that they offer that you could get on there and say, hey, look, I'm looking for white lips or poppin' pythons.
Yeah.
They are just solely bringing in somewhat frequent shipments of, tree frogs, mountain horn dragons, blue tongue skinks, red eye crocodile skinks, whatever is like pet store quality that they can put on a wholesale list.
Right.
You don't see any of that cool stuff, like any of the oddball pythons or monitors or anything like that. And then there's another one that I get on with.
That Ashley?
What's that?
Is that Ashley?
No. So I guess by importers, I mean different, like importing from the country of origin wild animals.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas Ashley's bringing in like captive bred for the most part.
Right.
No, these bringing in basically farmed or wild caught stuff. Mm-hmm. There's like two people really, and only one of which I can get on with and get, say, poplins and white lips and whatever else, savus, which not anymore. But
I was gonna say, I haven't seen those in a minute.
No, my savus, man, I got them in 2013. And then from these particular imports, every year after that, you'd order savus and they send you Mac lots. So I don't know what happened there. As far as I know, they can be exported, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I don't know, they really fell off the radar here too, because there was a point where they were pretty easy to get a hold of, and I think they were under $300, and then over time they just disappeared. I can really only think of a handful of people off the top of my head that even have some, let alone are trying to breed them.
Yeah,
because that was a species I wanted for a long time when I was a kid, and
that's wonderful.
Never made it happen.
Do you know what they're going for out there nowadays?
I want to say like close to 800, maybe $1,000.
For regulars.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta start shipping to the States.
Yeah. It's just like for whatever reason, man, the supply just kind of disappeared. And I don't know if it was a export thing or what, or because I don't know that they're any more difficult to breed than anything else.
I would assume once you're breeding captive bred, then they're probably not a problem.
Yeah.
But everybody hopped on the morph train and forgot about all the brown snakes.
True that.
Yeah.
How's what's been the most difficult part with importing monitors? I mean, that's sort of an entire other level of regimen and protocol and stuff when you're dealing with something that's considerably smarter than most snakes and stuff you're gonna get. What's the biggest hurdle there?
I prefer them over snakes. Besides female tree monitors, they usually seem to do pretty well. They often have tapeworms, but popwins often always have tapeworms too.
Mm-hmm.
I find them to be pretty good. Hatchlings I find are often super dehydrated.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get good ones, then they're no problem. The problem that I find is you can't get them and put them in a glass tank with a screen top, like most things.
Yeah.
They don't handle it. They'll just crash and dehydrate or smash on the walls. But if you, pretty much any monitors I get in, they go into either like a plywood box, like the one behind me, but very simplistic, loaded with, cork and branches, whatever, a lot of security, super high humidity, and or PVC cage, same thing, with just a lot of heat, a lot of humidity, and a lot of privacy. And they seem to do really well. Same thing, like I don't deal with any internal parasite issues for months, like until they're gaining weight, or if they're bloated and they're eating a lot, you know what I mean, and they're not gaining any body weight, then obviously you have to deal with the internal issue sooner than later. Or you'll see, tapeworms in the water dish, or you'll see it hanging out of their,
Mm-hmm.
But no, I find with them, like with most of it, it's heat, humidity, privacy. So when I get them in, like for example, I'm waiting on, some blue tree monitors and torch monitors, and the cages that are set up are plywood, UVB heat mounted inside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go as simplistic with them as I do with the snakes. It just doesn't seem to work that well with them. And they're all just loaded with bark and cork. And that's that. I soak them. I search them over for any, ticks or whatever. Their cages are preventamited as well, because they come in the same box as everything else, right? And I just put them in there, and that's that. I change the water every day. I give them dishes of food so I can really see. And as long as they're small, like I just pound it with insects. And often you don't really see the monitors much for the first month or two.
Yeah, I bet.
You see that the water's dirty every day. And then you walk in the room and you'll see them fly off the basking spot and disappear.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have these like Waze cameras.
Yeah.
So I go on my phone. Yeah. Even like my tricolors. That's the only time I can or my blue tails. That's the only time I can watch them actually do any activities is on my phone through the cameras.
Now, do you think that's because of, and this is not a slight at you at all, but because you don't, for lack of a better word, interact with them as much as you would, say, a pet, they just don't have that comfortability with you yet? If you only had two, they would have warmed up to you a lot better. But because you have a whole collection, it may be that you're just interacting less with them. Do you think that's the case?
I think to an extent, yeah. And with species, yeah. Because I used to really interact a lot with my monitors before I had 40 of them. But I noticed with a lot of the high-strung species, I don't think there is a way to, like,
Yeah.
say with the tricolors.
Yeah.
Not a chance, man. Like when I've had to move them because I just upgraded their cages, I'm like worried about them dying from just the event of me having to catch them. Because soon as you come to them, they flip out. They're smashing off the walls. And then they panic to the point where they launch at you and like bite and shake their head and then run and smash off the walls again. And like until you catch them. But the first year almost that I had them, I would see that they were out. I would not make eye contact because they're very aware of your eye contact. And I would just act normal, do things in the room and just casually walk by them. If they made eye contact, I would just, slowly blink and not stare at them. And they eventually learned that they could bask all day in front of me and I'm not going to touch them. Whereas if I tried to open the cage and interact, they would just flip out, right? So then they got to the point where I could walk up and if I would do this, they were smashing the front of the cage with their mouth open, like flipping out. And I couldn't even open the cage anymore to do anything without them trying to get to me because they knew that I wasn't going to touch them and it was just food. So species like that, yeah. But then the tree monitors are really intelligent and curious. So I can show them food and they'll walk up to me, grab onto the container and investigate it. But the blue tails and the tricolors, I don't think you could without losing a digit. You know what I mean? You'd have to keep a small cage and catch them. But and again, small cages, right? If you keep like my hatchling monitors, a lot of them hatch and I put them in the store from day one. Or like I keep them in a rack for a few days. And then I put them in cages in the store. Those ones, man, you're changing the water and the quince monitors and everything, they're jumping on you, climbing up your arms. You're putting one off, another one's jumping on you. But my holdbacks go into just 4x2x2s to start in the back. And they don't see, 30 people a day.
Yeah.
And the cage is bigger, right? Like I start my baby Indicus complex stuff for the most part in, 36 by 18 exoterras with the tops covered. And it's a small cage, right? So they get tame right away. So that's how you go about it. But I don't care about them being tame. I just want them to grow and feel
comfortable and
to reproduce. Yeah. Whereas if it's a pet, I'm hauling it out all the time.
Yeah.
They might not care to reproduce so much.
Sure. And forgive me if you covered this earlier, but do you ever do any of the roughneck complex?
I got a little discouraged. I had rudicolus.
Okay.
And they were breeding like crazy. My female was huge. That would have only been the second species of monitor that I would have reproduced. And it was when she was due to lay. So I didn't have as much of an eye for it at the time. And she was due to lay when we were moving cities.
Damn.
And so what we were doing is we were still working full time and then we get off work and then we load up, make a trip an hour and a half to Red Deer, unload a bunch of stuff, go back, work in the morning, or I would stay here for 2 days and work on the building. And so we were moving like 200 something animals while she was due to lay. And I had the pair together still. And I think she wasn't, I don't know. I don't know if she wasn't satisfied with the nesting option, but I ended up losing her. And when we opened her up, she had an egg lodged sideways right in her vent, right in between her hips. And it was so lodged sideways that it was very difficult for me to remove it physically. Like I could hardly rip it out.
Wow.
And she had 5 fertile eggs and 3 slugs. So after that, I had my male for a good year or two, and I just couldn't find a female, and I decided to get out of it.
Yeah.
And focus more on mainly Indicus complex, but then I've got the tree monitors and spinulosis and dwarfs as well.
Very cool. Very cool.
But you can only work with so many of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then I shipped out, I downsized again because previously my girlfriend at the time was with it. And then after she left, it's just me that does everything, like the store and the breeding and everything. So I recently just sent out a bunch like Sarambonensis, Similis, Merdens, some more Melinus, a breeding pair of Melinus, Pilbaras.
Nice.
So I scaled back a fair bit.
Very cool, man.
That's one you definitely don't see much down here either. Is Pilbaras.
Yeah.
Oh, they're wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Dream species for me, man.
They're a really cool little monitor. I think I like the Kimberleys a little better.
I say, are you keeping Kims?
I am, yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, they're fun. I just like how flat and streamlined the Kims are.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not bite. Like I'll catch them out to do something. And, when they start squirming out and you got them by the back hips and they're swinging their body, they won't bite even in that particular moment. But whereas my Pilbaras, if I were to catch them, they'd try and bite.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to
some Kims eventually. I had my Ackies for a bit, but Kims would definitely be the sort of the first stop when I take that dive again.
Oh, they're worth it. Yeah.
Super cool, man. Do you dabble in any Cordillus? Girdle tail lizards?
No.
I found that there is a small smattering of Canadians that have a handful of them, but it's just like anywhere else in the world. It's super niche, and only those people know each other, and that's it.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
Do you?
I do. I keep Rhodesianus, but my buddy and I, we used to keep a lot of them, and I know I gave him the last of mine except for the Rhodesians, and then he went up selling a couple that went to people in the Midwest, which in turn I know went to Canada. So, but again, this is a few years back. So,
yeah.
But you guys do get a lot of different imports that we don't. In the group chat earlier, they were talking about Fiji Island iguanas and such.
I have those.
Oh, that's killer, man. Yeah. Killer.
Yeah, me and my buddy Daniel and I went in on a pair of them.
Wild, man. I've never seen them in person. It's crazy.
They're cool. They're cool because they're just such a delicate, if you could say soft-spoken, like
sure.
Like they're just very shy and calm, and you get them on your hand, and yeah, they're not like a green iguana, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, they're cool. I'm hoping to get. They were young when I got them, and I got one infertile clutch of eggs. So I'm hoping this summer to get some fertile eggs out of them.
Very cool, man. Super cool. Another species that just doesn't make sense why we're not allowed to have them.
Yeah, that one's weird. That one is really weird.
Very.
I mean, 10 years ago, I would have never thought that you'd have them here. And now they're, you know what I mean? If you got the money, you can go buy a pair tomorrow. I can buy a pair.
What do they cost?
$2,500 for a female and like $1,500 for a male.
Okay.
Canadian, yeah.
Doable.
Yeah, not terrible. I mean, the female kind of hurts because it's just for like a green lizard, but
yeah.
Yeah. What snakes are you breeding for the shop?
For the shop?
Yeah, I mean both, like personal projects and for the shop.
For the shop, like specifically for the shop that I'm not super passionate about, I guess. The only thing that I really breed is the beardies. And I was breeding a lot of Uromastics, but I've been getting rid of them all over the last couple of months. As far as snakes go, boas, I am working with. I do a lot of doom rolls. I've got a lone Madagascar ground that I can't find a female for. I do a lot of Amazon tree boas. Emeralds I've yet to produce, but I've got a good handful of them. The Dominican Red Mountain boas, the Bahama boas. I think that's it for boa. I recently got a pair of Argentine boas. I've got striped Surinams. Over the last year, I've gotten rid of all of my morphs, Colombian morphs and stuff. I just don't want to breed any of that. Like, if I can go buy it from a buddy, I just don't really care to breed it because there's enough. And then
Sure.
pythons, I'm doing green tree pythons, and then I've got water pythons, maclots, olive pythons. I have a lone dunce python. Popwins. I've got Timor pythons, gold white lips, black white lips, ring pythons. Sabus, like you said.
Got the lasses covered, man.
Yeah. If it's like a fine scaled iridescent python,
Yeah.
I'm there. I play for bowling.
The Timors, or should I say lesser Sunda pythons? Any luck with them?
Yeah. Horrible.
At least he's honest, kids.
The opposite of luck.
Yeah.
I had the biggest female. I didn't even know they got this big. I had a 9.5 foot female, and her head was, like this.
Yeah.
Really old. I lost her. She was egg bound. And then I had a younger pair that were siblings to Don Patterson's that he produced with, I think, 2 years ago. And they were breeding. And then the female developed a growth on her trachea.
Really?
And I took her in, and the vet was very hesitant. She said that's a tricky operation. They removed the growth, and it appeared to be wonderful. And then a month later, she dropped dead. So now I have 2 males. So
are your rings as horrible as everyone else's?
No. They're better than my white lips. The female is really good. The male sometimes is really good if you catch him when he's moving or something. But if you just open it and he's coiled up, you go near him and he springs open and is not very happy. But they're not terrible, actually, mine. Which I've got them.
Everyone I've talked to that's Adam is just they're horrible.
Yeah, mine are pretty good. I only had one other one in the past, and he was really good too. Mm-hmm. So I got lucky there.
Nice. And your water pythons, do you guys have localities up there or no?
No. Currently, I'm giving my female to my helper because mine are different localities that I'm breeding. Okay. My female is like 8 feet.
Wow.
As big around as pop can, almost.
Jesus.
Really square head, that really square light colored head, and then olive body.
Yeah.
Whereas my male is like 4 feet maybe. Little pointy head, eyes on the top.
Yeah.
Out here, there was no water pythons. You couldn't get them. Like, nobody had them. And just recently, over like the last 3-4 years, I've seen a couple people with pairs now.
Nice.
These ones, like the female, I bought her when I was like 15, and then I sold her, and then she went out east. And then 4 years ago, I found her again and bought her.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I produced a couple of clutches out of her. I held back one female, and then I got a nicer pair of babies off somebody else that are a smaller locality. I don't know specifically which locality. And so I'm raising those up, and then I'm just giving my helper the big female because I don't want to be bullying when they're that different,
Sure, sure. That's cool, man.
Harry wants to know how you get a yearling asshole doomerals to eat before they become king food.
Just don't feed it for a long time. No. Doomerals, I find that.
Give it a snake.
What's that?
Give it a snake.
The doomerals.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find ASFs, man. If I give them an ASF, they snap it.
Well, anybody who says they have a doomerals that doesn't eat, if you throw in a frozen thawed snake, it will be gone in the morning.
I have never considered it.
Yeah, and when you produce doomerals and you have 10 babies, but you only have 5 drawers, don't double it up.
Really?
Oh, yeah, because in the morning you will have 5 really fat babies.
I never would have thought.
And then 2 days later, you will have 10 dead snakes
Yeah.
because they will throw them all back up.
Crazy. I never would have considered it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, mistakes I've made.
Yeah. The things you know.
Now you know. Yeah.
No,
No, seriously though, like anybody who has a doom rolls that doesn't eat, I tell them like find someone who has a snake in their freezer, and even if you do some frozen scenting or just thaw out like a corn or a king or something and give it to them, they'll take it.
I'm gonna try that.
Yeah.
I
mean, go through all the standard trial, the usual trials first, you know. And if that's like if you're a few months in and the thing's like I'm dying, give it a corn snake. Yeah. Let me ask you this. I ask everyone who's on this show the same question who breeds doom rolls. Do your babies and your adults have a bald spot on their chin?
Yes.
Okay.
And you know, I'm not sure yet why you're asking.
Okay.
But my buddy was out in Madagascar catching doom rolls, and I was asking him, I was like, "Do they have that spot under the chin, man?" And he's like, "We didn't look under the chin."
Oh,
yeah,
dude,
and I was so curious. But I'm curious why you asked that.
So there's a couple stories behind it. One, some people say that no one to my knowledge has gone this in depth, but if you take a photo and zoom in really, really close, it's kind of like a whale's fluke, where it may not be an exact fingerprint, but you could at least keep track of lineage and stuff like that. I don't know if I believe that fully, just because it's always kind of slightly the same depending on who mom was.
Yeah.
But there's also a big rumor that the original stock that we have in the Western world, or Western herpetoculture, if you want to call it that, it's all from the same mom and dad. That's why.
Yeah.
So, and like we're going back like 50 years.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
I was curious. I wish, but they didn't find any more after I had asked him that.
Yeah. And it's also crazy because everyone who has ground boas, none of them have a spot.
The Madagascar.
Yeah.
Or the Madagascarensis.
Yeah. None of them have spots. So.
Yeah. That is interesting.
Harry said it's artificially alive. It's 2 years old and has never eaten.
Really?
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
2 years long. I produced a paradox doom rolls, and it didn't eat the first year. I still have it. It eats good now.
Yeah.
It's kind of picky here and there. It likes ASFs, but
yeah.
Is that what got that one going?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Let me ask you, do you think that the paradox is giving it some kind of, I don't want to say genetic defect, but that is the reason why it's not a good eater like doom rolls tend to be?
I would say if it wasn't a doom rolls, maybe I would consider it, but I always with doom rolls have a couple that are just okay. I'll get them going, no problem, and then I'll sell them, and then the person cannot get it to eat.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, this last year, the babies were no problem. They all ate, actually 2 days after they were born. But usually I don't have that. Usually I have a few that are kind of a pain, and I got to start them on live or something, and then.
Yeah. How big are your adults?
One female is about 7 feet.
Nice.
The other female is about 6 feet. And then one male is maybe 6 feet, 5.5. And the other one's about 4 foot.
Still, it's a big male.
Man, I have a picture on my Facebook of probably the biggest doom rolls I swear anybody's ever seen. This thing would compete with the biggest Colombian boa you ever seen.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's pictures on my Facebook of it. And this sucker, like,
wow, like
this, and the head on it. And I bought it off a guy because, like, I couldn't believe the size of it. Everything he had was huge, that guy. But yeah, Emeralds was, I have a picture of it curled up in a 4x2, and it just took up, like, the whole damn cage.
Wow.
Yeah, that thing was.
That's cool. That's cool. And since we're on the topic, how big is your ground boa?
Small.
Really?
Yeah, he's a male. He might be 6 foot.
Okay.
Yeah, he floated around for a while, and then I seen him on Codyjoe for $80.
Really?
Yeah. And I got him, and it ended up being a girl I know, and she's like, I've been trying to get rid of him, and I can't get rid of him, but the only people that want him are idiots that don't know how to look after a snake. And so I just let him go, and she couldn't get rid of the thing. So I got $40. Yeah.
Dude, that's a very expensive snake in the U.S.
Yeah. There was one guy, I think it was like Regis Co. is what he called this thing, and he did those in Tanzania maybe 12, 15 years ago here, and that was it. And then they all kind of disappeared after that. I found like 2 males, and there's a private guy out here, but the guys that know him won't tell me who it is. They just keep saying, no, I got a buddy who's secretly breeding them, but he's not ready to let him go yet. And I'm like, come on, man. Just
right.
Female.
Yeah. The only ones I ever messed with were zoo stock that were given to a friend so that the zoo could, like, I guess, diversify gene flow or something. And then he was supposed to keep them for 2 years, and then he wound up having to get rid of them, but they wound up going back to the zoo or whatever. But the boy was like probably 7 foot, and the girl was like pushing 11.
Yeah, I heard those Maddies can get huge.
Yeah, man. Big girl.
Yeah, I think one's in Canada and they have any. I will buy them.
Nice. So are we ready to talk about flatfish?
I how many chondros do you have right now?
Oh yeah, let's talk stick snakes.
Let's chondros real quick.
Well, 11 or 12.
Excellent.
A lot of locality stuff, designer stuff, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah, mainly all pure. I have one animal that's not currently, and another one that I've done a trade for. It's just not in my possession yet.
Gotcha.
What localities are you keeping?
I have a handful of sarongs, a few wild caught adults, and then offspring that I produced.
Cool.
The one female is just a solid bright blue snake.
Nice.
And then I have an Aru male that's just pure yellow, which is odd for an Aru.
Yeah, very.
And then I have and then BX.
Okay.
And nothing else locality wise. But
excellent.
I'm basically just kind of looking to continue holding back anything I produce until I've got at least 50 of those things.
Nice. A goal. I like that.
Yeah, they're nice. I'd like to see if the blue does anything. Chances are it's not, but this blue female I got, I picked her out of a bunch of wild imports. I seen her from like 20 feet away.
Wow.
She looked, now looking at her, if you were to stand back and look at her, you would think she was a hormonal Aru.
Mm-hmm.
Like her whole spine is just white.
Oh, wow.
But if you've seen her before she was blue, she came in as a sarong and she looked like a sarong just with a heavy white. But she had a weird color to her. She was not like that deep green. It was like a turquoisey color.
Sure.
And then she had a heavy blue net pattern over her. But
nice.
She's so blue now that you wouldn't know that she had any patterns previously.
Very cool. And the yellow Aru, it has Aru dorsaling, but or is it like almost like a Kofiau, just yellow?
So it's just yellow, but he's got the scattered white scales throughout him, but those are yellow too, just a different yellow.
Like it's just a lighter hue.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you guys have a lot of Kofiau up in Canada or no?
No, I haven't seen any. However, on those Indo lists before, when I first started hopping on those, there was Kofiau, and they sold them as lime green, or I think they called it true yellow or something on the lists.
Yeah.
And they weren't terrible. Like the yellow adults were like $1,100.
Nice.
And I should have done it, but I never. Bolins were $1,700.
Wow.
And I was like, next year. And then the next year they were $3,200. And I was like, next year. And then, well, you know,
That's how it goes.
yeah. But no, I haven't seen any Kofi out. No, but there's, you know, there's guys, really quiet guys that have a lot of cool stuff, but
Yeah.
I haven't seen anybody with Kofi out here.
Still cool, man.
Mm-hmm. The vine snakes.
Yep.
As far as those, is that something where you're doing feeder geckos and stuff, or have you managed to?
And we're talking Asian vine, right?
Yeah.
Tula. Yeah. I was working with those a lot. At one point, I had like yellow and silver ones too.
Cool.
I was bringing in lizards. I was breeding pictus geckos for them at one point. Luckily, I've always had good access to like imported stuff and wholesale lists, so I could get anoles or house geckos or whatever. I had 3 litters of them, and that's when I quit working with them, basically. The babies were
tough.
Yeah, the first time I had them going on guppies, which I had the McTarzans, which are fish eaters, right? They always take fish, even the adults. But I had a lot of Nasuda, and the Nasuda is the ones I had litters from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the first litter started, they would take guppies, and then they kind of stopped. I tried dwarf aquatic frogs, and they would get them and pull them out of the water and just kill them and leave them. And I ended up basically with them, because out here we don't have anoles. Like, you can buy anoles, but they're all adults, right?
Yeah.
And I found geckos they didn't do well with. They just stick to the wall too well. You know what I mean? And it doesn't work. Yeah. So I ended up feeding them baby dart frogs.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at one point I had 2 litters at the same time.
Wow.
And I was going through 20 dart frogs a week.
Oof.
And it was so expensive, and I couldn't.
What species?
The Santa Isabellas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a Pipidobates or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they're cheaper, you know. But yeah, and I couldn't sell them because everybody wanted them, and they're like, "Oh, so I can buy all the feeders from you every week." I'm like, "No, you gotta be forceful."
Yeah.
And, I could never sell them, and they were like $150, and I was buying 20 dart frogs a week to feed them. So I just I got out of them. The flying snakes were a lot easier.
Really?
The vines. Oh yeah, flying snakes just eat mice.
Now the Nasuda, you said you had produced all greens, or you produced white and yellow too?
No, I was never able to produce the yellow ones. The female was yellow and the male was half yellow and half silver, like a purpley silver.
Cool.
But those were Persina.
That's right.
And I was never able to produce those ones.
Such a cool group.
Yeah, man.
I love them, but yeah, if they were easier to manage, or if I bred more like anoles or something, I would love to keep them, but they're just too much work. All of that, I started kind of getting out because I was very fond of the flying snakes too. I have a bunch of sunbeams. I have file snakes too, but I'm getting out of all of that. The pythons and boas are a little harder. They can hold themselves better, you know.
Sure.
The other stuff is just too tedious. You're in there mucking around, and it's too much. And the flying snakes, I was not fully successful. I bred them once, and same thing. I was moving while the eggs were hatching, and they all pipped and then just died. And when I pulled them out, like the babies are so small that establishing them wouldn't have been fun. Like I did rough greens too, and those babies, so like
those are tiny.
Yeah, they're curl up now. Yeah,
I don't even know what the hell they're eating at that size because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like tiny waxworms and stuff. But all that stuff is too tedious for if you're working with a lot of things.
No, for sure. You got to pick and choose your battles when you got that much going on.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm watching that Molinas in the background just like scale down.
That male, yeah.
Dude, it's so cool. Hell of a backdrop, man. I love it.
I know they were sleeping in the nest box, So I threw a bunch of chicks in there. You guys are coming out. Like,
nice.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And they're good looking. I could see it's a good looking animal, man.
We're not. I call this my white pair. The pair I sent them to a zoo out here, and they were like black and yellow, but they weren't as fertile as this pair. Whereas this male is like white, got like a yellowy tinge, but for the most part, he's like white. But the babies, the first baby I hatched out of this pair, I held back, and it's a male, and that thing it's the nicest one.
Nice.
It glows yellow and jet black, and then I
cool.
used a female from the high yellow pair, which doesn't have a ton of color yet, but the female,
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Now we can talk about stingrays.
Yes. So, first of all, how does one just say, you know what? I'm going to keep stingrays at home.
I was never into fish at all, actually. And then I started working at Petland, so you got to learn about fish, right?
Yeah.
Thing. And then I was working one day, and I always ended up being the only person working the fish and reptile room. They were just bad at scheduling. And an Asian guy came in, and I couldn't really understand him that well. And I thought he said, "Do you have food for arowanas?" I was like, "Oh yeah, man." And he walked away. And then he came back with a bucket, and he said, "Will you take my arowana?" And he just dropped it on the floor and left.
Wow.
And there was like a 3-foot silver arowana just like curled up in a 5-gallon bucket, jammed.
Wow. Just balled up in there.
Oh yeah. And so I called my manager, and he's like, "Oh, well, we don't have any tanks for that. Like, you can take it if you want it."
Nice.
I just like anything big and weird. So I was like, "Oh yeah, like
hell of a fish, man."
Yeah, I know. That was like my first real fish. And I had a 90-gallon tank set up at home for a 3-toed amphuma.
That's cool.
Yeah, like a big salamander.
Yeah.
And so I took it home, and I took the amphuma out, and I put the arowana in there.
Tell me you housed them together.
I learned not to do that because I did have little like ID sharks and stuff, and then I ate them all.
Even a 3-foot amphuma and a 3-foot silver arowana, I bet you they'd leave each other alone.
Or you'd have a heavy YouTube video.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That thing was mean, man. You put anything in that tank, and that amphuma, at first it was cool till it was settled in.
Yeah.
And once it was settled in, anything, you put your arm in there and it would attack you. Like,
oh yeah.
That thing was nasty.
Death from below.
But yeah, I went and got a 200-gallon tank for the arowana, and then I started researching. And I realized you could keep monster fish. And then you know what it's like. Guys like alligator gars, ID sharks, prunes.
Yeah.
So I went on Kijiji and just found any cool big fish I could find, which was like ID sharks and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I seen stingrays. I wasn't quite there yet. But then like, I don't know, 6 months into keeping big fish, I got my first little Matoro pup. And I had it with young red-tailed catfish.
Oh, geez.
And I came home one day. I just got a tiger shovel nose finally. Threw it in there.
God,
you're
batting 1,000.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Well, I came home and the red-tailed catfish is like teetering on its belly. I was like, oh, he ate the tiger shovel nose. And then I was looking around for the stingray, and he just folded that thing up like a piece of salami. And,
yeah, dude.
And then like 4 days later, the red-tailed cat was dead too.
Jeez.
So I learned you can't really do rays and catfish. And then I got another ray, and within a month I had 8 of them.
Nice.
And then I started phasing out the catfish because the rays were like.
All right, so let's take a breath real quick and say, so for those of you listening, we're talking about freshwater stingrays. We are not talking about the things that killed Steve Irwin. We're not talking about the stuff you see at the aquarium swimming around with bull sharks and coral reefs. These are freshwater stingrays that, I mean, how big do they really get? I mean, most of them are like dinner plate size.
No, on average 24 inches across.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we out here now, we can't really get. You hear teacup stingray all the time, and that basically is like when you go to the pet store and you see a snake that says fancy ball python. Like teacup just means I don't know what it is. It's probably a small type though. But half those teacups, usually they're reticulated stingrays, which those ones will get, 12, 16 inches. Hystrix stingrays are same thing, like 12 to 14 inches on average. But in Canada, those are not here anymore. So Matoro stingrays, 3 foot across, 2 foot, 3 foot across.
Wow.
Size, and 3.5 foot with the tail. Males though are a little smaller. Like male Matoros will max out around 2 feet across. On average, like 18 inches, 16, 18. But then you get the black diamond, which are, the black ones with the white spots. They're an easy 24-inch disc, up to, 30.
Wow.
If you got the space, they'll hit 36.
Yeah, I think just by me, no one ever has them for sale that large.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when you go to your first boa breeder's place and you're like, boas actually get that big? Like,
yeah.
It's same with the rays. Yeah, you never see them. People got them in a 180 gallon or a 200 gallon, which is how big the filter should be,
Right.
But those suckers get big, man. Like if they live long enough, they're really sensitive too. So they, most of them that you see sell in the pet store, they don't make it. But no, all mine on average I have a lot of pearl stingrays too, which are a smaller type, and they're probably all 16 inches, 18 inches for the big females.
Nice.
And then my hybrids and my albinos or my Matoros and stuff are, 24 inches across.
Very cool. So speaking of, you're mentioning tank size. So have you made, and I know this is indicative with a lot of the guys who don't have ponds, they keep, silver arowana, and they keep, 4 foot long tiger shovel nose, and which is one fish in one tank. Yeah. Did you do a double tank system with like the bottom tank being the sump, or do you have like a external like pool filter?
I have a few styles.
Okay.
I have aquariums with sumps underneath. And then I have some 1,000 gallons with like big pressure filters. It's like a big sand filter like you would do for a swimming pool, but different. It's got like plastic media in it. And they're big, like they're the size of like your outdoor garbage can.
Sure.
And then I have multiple of those on each one. Nice. And then the way that they work is the water comes down from the top and pushes through the media, and then is sucked from the bottom and then out to the tank. So they're nice because I can flip a lever on the top over to backwash, and it'll reverse the flow, and it'll come up from the bottom and fluidize the water or the media, and it'll clean all your media, stir everything up, and then pump it out a different outlet to a drain.
Oh, wow.
And then you flip it over once you do your, and at that point, right, it's draining the aquarium. And then once you're done draining to where you want it, you flip the valve over to rinse, and then the flow goes back in through the top, and then the media settles again. And then all the water's still going out the drain until there's a glass window on there and you can see how clear it is. And then all that stirred up dirty water, once it's clear again, you flip it back over to filter, and it goes back to the tank.
Wow.
But those are a lot less maintenance because you don't ever open it, you just hit a lever, and that's that.
Especially with sand, and doing bulkheads with sand is just a nightmare.
Oh yeah. And then the other ones have sumps that are about at minimum 24 or 25% the volume of the aquarium. I like to do it like half the size of the aquarium itself.
Yeah, I had a buddy who had I think it was a 350. He had a 350 gallon, and then it was on a custom stand, and then he wound up getting a 200 gallon underneath it that he put dividers in, and then he had basically he made a refugium underneath. Yeah, and he had like one cubby was all bio balls, another cubby had not sponge filter, but the cotton mesh stuff.
Yeah, like the cotton batting.
Yeah, yeah. And then the last section, he actually had some like shrimp and some cleaner crab type stuff in there just to kind of pick up whatever chunks were left. And his whole thing was he went up making out of silicone and like putty. He made like a little ant mound because he was having such a problem with sand, just losing sand, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's pretty cool, man, that you have.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So how is it, because I've never done it, how is it maintaining how do I phrase this? How in can you get with stingrays in terms of like, is it like a lionfish where you kind of just avoid the fish in terms of cleaning the glass and doing some removal of stuff, or are they don't care, they're not going to sting you, they just want food?
You use a lot of tools. My arowanas are mean. Like he'll jump 2 feet out of the water to bite you if you got. Wow. So my arowanas are kind of a bugger to deal with too. The Asian ones, anyways.
Yeah.
But the stingrays, I used to be a lot more reckless. Okay. And then I almost got my throat cut one time by a big one.
Wow.
And I got a little more cautious. Like she tried jumping out of the tank and I had a tub of babies floating. And I just thought about the babies and I reached over and to catch the tub and she spun around and her tail like went across my throat.
Oof.
And then another time I did get stung. And then after that, I used to get in there and I was a little more reckless, but now I just use tools.
Yeah. You get hit on the arm, on the forearm?
I got it in the hand.
In the hand. Oh,
yeah.
Geez.
Yeah. It was in the middle of COVID and I was super sick. And I didn't want to quarantine. And so I was down working in the middle of the night and I just was in a bad mood because I was sick.
Yeah.
So I was scrubbing and I just didn't really think about the ray sitting there and I just spooked it and yeah.
So now did you get like obviously I'm underplaying it, but did you get like a love tap or did you get the whole barb?
The barb went about a quarter way in.
Okay.
And it was not what I expected. The second it even like touched me, like it almost felt like you got like your hand shot off or something. And then it kind of like it instantly was like a blood blistered up around it.
Yeah.
And then it made its way up to like the soft spots, like felt like they were gonna pop, and then your armpit felt like somebody was ramming like a broomstick in it, you know?
Oh yeah.
It was weird. It was like all my insides, mainly on that side, on my right side, felt like they're gonna explode.
It's venom hitting the lymph nodes, man.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, and I just sat there in a chair for a couple hours and wrote it out, and it went away.
But you didn't have like a bit of barb in you or anything, right?
No, luckily the barb stayed on the ray.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and you can see because they've got like a layer of like skin. It's almost like black tar over the barb.
Right.
And so when they stab something that pushes back, and you can see the white barb, so you can see exactly how far it went in.
Okay.
But luckily, it was a smaller one. Like if it was a big one, I see guys, and it looks like a venomous snake bite, right? Like it just raws out, and mine was pretty good. It just blood blistered up, and then it took a long time to heal, like because it kept callousing out, but it didn't rot like I see guys get stung by big ones.
Yeah, yeah. I got a buddy who got hit by one, and it snapped off. I mean, if you were to section the barb in thirds, that first third snapped off. He didn't realize it because it was up in him, you know, and he just thought, okay, I got tagged. And like he did the same thing you did, write it out. The venom wasn't so bad. And, you know, his arm swelled up, whatever. And then like days later, it just got black and just started getting necrotic. And so he goes to the like a hand specialist or whatever. Yeah. And they x-ray it, and you could see it just up in there. He had to have it surgically removed. They had to physically like open up his flesh and remove it.
Worst splinter ever.
Yeah, worst splinter ever, man. Yeah.
Yeah, those things are heavily barbed.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Wild.
There's
Wow.
people that get hit by them out here all the time when they're fishing and stuff. I don't know what species it is. They're saltwater, but everyone I know that's been hit by them says it sucks.
Yeah. You're definitely more careful after you get it once.
Yeah, for sure, man. I never mess with a lot of venomous fish in that regard. Like, I mean, I put my arm in with lionfish and like it's on the left and I'm on the right. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's a lot different than a ray that's constantly moving and looking and ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have a tendency to get a lot of them in a tank.
Yeah, well, it's like snakes. You can't just have one.
Yeah.
So,
And how often are they reproducing though?
Once you get them going, they'll go consistently. So if the female stay in with the male, she'll finish giving birth and the male will reimpregnate her.
wow.
And typically, like, they divide it. Potamotrigon is like the more common genus that you see kept. And they divide it into like black rays and brown rays. Black rays are typically like at least 4 months. And brown rays are closer to 3. They're like 3.5 month gestation. So they'll go like every 3.5 months.
Damn.
They'll drop litters. Yeah.
Wow.
But I've started separating them for the most part. Like, the way I do it is I build floating baskets, or more like hanging baskets. So it's like another tank with an acrylic bottom so I can see through just to see what's going on underneath. And then it's got they're like 1/2 inch squared plastic mesh almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrap it with that. So it's just like a floating tank in there. And I move pregnant females into there. And then that way they can, sometimes you'll get the pups, right? They're so food reactive that a pup will be swimming and a ray will just jump and bite it. And then it'll end up losing its tail or getting damaged. So the pups are protected up there. They're not damaged. And then the female, I can feed her heavy as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And all the freshwater stingrays are live birth, or do any of them do like that mermaid pouch thing?
All live birth.
Okay.
Yeah. Not like
Mermaid
the
purse.
eggs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mermaid purse, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Very cool. And what's the average litter size?
All over the place.
Okay.
So the first one I bred, her first litter was 4 pups. And then 3.5 months later, she gave birth to 13 pups.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I would say for me, like on average, like 4 to 6. Yeah, that was a pretty big one.
And what's the water quality that you're trying to go for? Are certain species, pristine? So just 7.0, no hardness, perfect nitrates, perfect nitrites.
Fiji bottle quality.
Just Fiji bottle water.
Oh yeah, yep. The pH I used to muck around. They like a lower pH.
Okay.
Like 6.5
Okay.
naturally, but I noticed you're better off rather than screwing around with buffers and stuff, and the amount of water changes you got to do, especially to breathe.
Oh yeah.
It's more detrimental to be mucking around with that than to just establish your raise to your pH.
Okay.
So my pH is high, like it's in the 8s.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And anytime I get a new ray, like I'll spend an hour drip acclimating it. I just have a drip running into the tub, and then I slowly just remove the water that it's in with. Because if you just drop them in there, they'll get pH shock. And
Yeah. So let me ask you this: if you're running pH of 8, and mom's giving birth, now those pups are just automatically accustomed to living at 8 because that's what mom was at.
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yep.
That's super cool, man. Super cool. Do they need any kind of, I don't want to say specials, like, is this in terms of water quality, do they need like a protein skimmer, or are they susceptible to any kind of like external parasites where you'd want to do like UV sanitizer or anything? Or are they pretty much just hardy?
Rays are pretty hardy in the sense of diseases and stuff. Like they don't get ick or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more water quality than anything really.
Okay.
Um,
I didn't know, because some of the guys that keep like some of the sharks and stuff, the freshwater sharks and stuff, like the blue sharks and whatnot, they do protein skimmers, even though it's freshwater, because it's going to take out some of the fungus and stuff like that.
yeah, it can have UV sterilizer for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, with rays, you don't run into as many. It's more, fungal infections and stuff like that you're going to get.
Okay. And on the same note, do you have just like general LED fish lighting, or do you do some kind of spectrum lighting specifically for them?
I'm brutal.
Keep them in the dark.
And it's shabby. I've just got like shop LEDs hanging from the roof.
Excellent.
That's it. Yeah, nothing.
Love it.
I'm about the rays, not the tanks.
No,
I have one.
Odyssey lights. Fuck those.
Yeah. One thing is natural and stuff, with wood and sand. But the other ones, I just give them like driftwood and stuff for them to knock around because they like to chew on it and push stuff around or whatever.
Cool. Just glass bottom on those?
Yeah. The one I'm going to do sand too. I prefer the sand.
Yeah.
They move it around and stuff. But those ones that have those big canisters, with the sumps and everything, it's just overflow, right?
Sure.
Those big canister type filters I have, it's a pump actually sucking. So you're just going to suck up all your sand.
Yeah.
Whereas the one tank that has that type of filtration, it's 40 inches tall. And I put my intake, it's almost halfway up.
Okay.
And the sand that I like to use is kind of heavy.
Yeah.
So when the rays kick it up, it doesn't make it that high. So that tank, I think I can. And that one it's like 1,000 or 1,200 gallon fiberglass with a window in it. So that one I'm going to do sand too.
Very cool.
But I have a 9.5 by 6.5 foot pond that I just don't think it would work because the intake is like a bar, like 4 inches up from the bottom.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
Yeah.
You're just going to clog that bar full of crap.
Oh, and it's literally, the bar is a PVC pipe.
Yeah. It's just
half-inch holes.
Yeah.
So, you're going to have no sand left in the pond.
Sure. Do they prefer, just static flow, or do you have, power heads in there, or what?
They like a lot of flow.
Okay.
They like a lot of moving water.
Just constant current?
Yeah. It's not like some of the plecos where they like it like a powerful current.
It's not like a stream, but the water's got to be moving.
Yeah, exactly.
A babbling brook.
Yeah.
I have returns on either end.
Oh, cool.
Well, I have separate filtration on either end in case one fails.
Nice.
I just have one filter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have returns on every end. So if you look at the water, you can see, especially on the top of the flow, is going everywhere.
Awesome.
And then there's usually a high pressure return. I got a skunk outside my door right now.
Canadian raccoons.
It's cold out. Bring them inside.
I'm sure that's what you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have returns that just push a lot of oxygen into the water too.
Nice.
The rays are very sensitive to depleted oxygen.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, they prefer low pH and heavy oxygen. It's kind of what they don't really like high nitrates either. Even though nitrates,
you equate that with, yeah. You figure all those heavier acid waters are going to be, high in tannins and dead leaves and all that. But at the same time, you're going to have a lot of root growth promoting oxygen and so I get it.
Actually, all my ray tanks now too have pothos growing out of them.
Oh, cool, man.
See all the roots hanging in there. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is it just floats, or you have it draped over the side?
The one aquarium I just have holes in the top, and all the roots are just in there, and it's covered
that's
the
cool.
top of the aquarium.
Oh, that's awesome. The canopy.
Yeah, and then the other ones have those big canister filters go up to rain barrels.
Nice.
And then I have rain barrels have sponges in the top, and then it's bio balls. So then the water trickles down through all that, and then they have like a bulkhead with an elbow, and it's kind of like it was designed to be like an overflow because they were a different style before. They used to run for Buddy, and now I just ran all the roots in through that. So the roots go through the bio balls.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pothos hangs out of the top of the rain barrels.
That's great, man. That's so cool, dude. You got it all dialed in, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I one more Ray question, and then we'll start wrapping it up because we're at the 2-hour mark. But what do you feed them?
I feed them like smelts and silver sides,
Okay.
and shrimp, and I like that the most.
Shrimp or the silver sides?
What's that?
Shrimp or the silver sides?
I like the price of the silver sides, and I like the shrimp.
Fair enough.
But it was costing me, depending how much I was feeding, like $12 to $25 a day to feed them.
Okay.
And it's too much.
Yeah.
So I feed as well sinking trout pellets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, they're like 48% protein.
Nice.
And so they grow their rays really well. They're loaded with vitamins and everything. But the pellets really do a number on the water.
I can imagine.
Yeah. When you're feeding pellets, the water has a bit of a tint to it, and it can smell a little bit more. Whereas when I'm just feeding all raw, it's crystal clear. There's no tint, no smell. And then I'm usually changing like 500 gallons every 2 days. Like on each system.
Wow. Damn. It's a lot of water, man. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's wild, man. Yeah, and I imagine that, like, I've seen it with some of the catfish where, you give them sinking pellets, and if they go after the pellet real quick, then you're good. But if the pellet had time, kind of like Cocoa Puffs, when they're in the milk for too long, they get mushy, and then the cat will eat the pellet or pellets, and they're already soft because they've absorbed all that water. And then the minute they like make that vacuum in their mouth, all that crap just comes out their gills. And yeah, okay.
Yeah, you got to be very cautious with the pellets to feed just less than what they want.
Yeah. Timing is everything with them, I guess.
Oh yeah. You don't feed and leave.
Yeah.
You wait, and then you scoop it out if they don't get it right away.
Yeah, or you put in 2, and then you put in 2 more, and then you put in 1 more. And then you're good. Yeah.
I do a handful per tank, and then I go back, and then.
Nice. That's great, man. Dude, I'm loving it. Love stingrays. So cool.
Yeah, they're like dogs. They got a lot of personality.
That's awesome. Very awesome.
I like to pet the ones in the touch tank.
For sure.
The zoo.
For sure, man.
The ones in the wild, they're not as much fun.
No. Well, and all the species they have different skin too.
Yeah.
Popwin python breeding for Lisa.
Oh yeah.
Get into the Apodora real quick.
With the right quickness.
Because I know there was a.
Well, I had 2 snakes and I put them in the same cage, and
I have one huge female that looks like the Michelin Man.
Nice.
Yeah.
She didn't eat her boyfriend.
Process.
Yeah.
What's the process of establishing and cycling them, and why do you think it took a smaller girl to make that happen? So I'm assuming your female was smaller.
Yeah. So I had, with the size thing, I just believe it's age. Like with Popwins, right? 90% of the ones that come in are 10, 12 footers. And I just think they've spent too long in the wild. It takes adult snakes far longer to acclimate to captivity than it does babies. I feel like you could raise a baby and get in a wild caught adult, and you would breed them both at the same time because it would take you that long to acclimate, I feel.
Wow.
And so I was trying. I had these they were 13, 14 foot huge females. And I got close, the same thing. They would lay inverted, and the one had huge follicles and everything. And nothing. Well, and then the next year that female died. And I had multiple stage necropsies done. And she had all kinds of internal stuff going on. But I think it was just the fact that the female that I bred, she was 5-6 feet when she came into captivity, which 5-6 feet is a very young Papuan python.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, this big around.
Sure.
And my male was the same. And so I had raised them, my male I had for like 7-8 years, and the female I had for like 5 years at this point. But my buddy got her like 2 years before that. So I think it was just that they were young. Establishing them to captivity, not difficult. Once you deal with the tapeworms, I find Papuans are horrible for tapeworms. Like my first female, she was crapping out 4-foot sections of live tapeworm.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It was unreal. Multiple 4-foot sections. But they're easy to establish. Other than I had a few that would just rub their face off initially.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I noticed is I had my male paired up again with that female that almost went for me the year before. Nothing really. They were locking up, but there was no follicle growth or anything. The year before, when I got her to build huge follicles, I did not stop hitting her with food.
Okay.
I'm a very light feeder. I feed very light and quite seasonally. So for me, approaching breeding with the Indonesian stuff, I'm smashing them with food, and that's one of my triggers for them, right? That's approaching me dropping temps. And it didn't happen that year.
Well, what constitutes smashing? Like what's the frequency when you're
you going from like once a month to once a week?
Yeah, pretty much. I feed 3-4 weeks a big meal. And then instead they'll be getting like, say, a jumbo rat every week for like a month or two leading up to my temp drops.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And then during my temp drops, I'll cut it back a little bit because I don't want to be feeding them when I'm pairing and stuff too. But the female, that young female, she normally is a killer. Like I go to the cage, she comes out and she tries to throw coils around anything and wrap anything, bite onto it, and eat it. And I went to change her water, and she just like sucked back into their hide, which was weird for her. Normally it's the other way around. And I lifted it, and she was in a tight coil. And so I pulled her out, and I palpated, and she had 8 big follicles.
Nice.
And so I threw the male. That was in the beginning of January. I took the male, threw him in there. He was all over it. And I literally, when I paired them, both females, when I paired them, I pulled all-nighters. I just drank coffee all night, and I sat in front of the cage. And then I put those cameras on. And I would just walk around the store all day, literally with customers, like, yep, okay, yep, sorry, I'm just watching. Like,
yeah,
make sure,
Yeah.
And, yeah, within a week, they were locking up, like, every day after that.
Wow.
And then it was pretty – I took notes every day, like temperature notes, though. What side of the cage she was on, the hot side or the cool side, and then what her body temp was versus what the cage floor was. And she was always like 3 to 5 degrees warmer than the cage floor. On average, 85.
Okay.
And yeah, they bred for like a month or whatever. And then she ovulated. I think it was in March. Yeah, I think it was March she ovulated. It was January 27th is when the first lock was.
Wow.
And yeah, it was typical Python stuff, right? Like I dropped the room to, 70 degrees at night. Her hot spot was only 86. And she didn't use it that often except for towards the end. There, I think in my notes, there was one time when her body temperature was 86.7, I think.
Wow.
Otherwise, it was always like 83 to 85 was her body temperature. And then I go the way that my system works is in the summertime, I have extreme daytime highs and mild nighttime lows. Nighttime, the room will be 77, 78. On average during the day, it's like 80, 82, but you'll get extreme daytime highs. Sometimes it'll be 85. And so that'll happen throughout the summer. In the winter, it reverses. You only get mild daytime highs, 80, 82. And you'll get extreme nighttime lows, 70 degrees. Sometimes you might hit 67 if I can get it down there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way mine goes. I feel for me, it's more important to just have a consistent, it's not down to the degree or down to the month. It's a consistent open season, you know?
Right.
Hotter or more food this time, cooler and less food this time, or vice versa, you know? And so I do that very loosely. Whereas before I was, you know, you go down 1 degree every week until you hit this. Like, I don't think that's so much important. I think it's consistency. People will try and breed them, and then it doesn't work 1 year. And then they'll go, oh, this guy's doing this. So then they'll change and start doing that.
Yeah.
They need to get used to it. And that's why I find like the breeder loan thing doesn't really work that well either with a lot of those species, right? Because it takes them a couple years to adjust to their seasons. Yeah.
Very cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah, I was just talking about that the other day. You know, adult chondros, like females especially, it seems like if you get an adult female, they do seem to take a while to really sort of get in sync with everything else.
Yeah,
they've moved. You know, those moves just do something to them that they just take a long time to kind of come around to getting in the swing of things.
Yeah, it seems all trust in your process and letting them get used to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Yeah.
Wise words, man.
Yeah, it seems to work. Wow.
Yeah.
For most of it anyway.
I'm trying Fuscus again this year. I think last year they were just too small. They just didn't care. But this year I got way more temps, like legitimately got them way colder, and fingers crossed. So
have they locked?
No, they're still separate right now. I put them together for a little bit, and they kind of looked at each other like, "What the hell do you want us to do?" And and then I just I didn't feed them for over a month because it was probably high 60s, low 70s, and then it spiked and it was like 80 because it's the natural temperature outside. And I was like, all right, things need to eat. So I fed everything 3 days ago. And right now I just checked on my phone on the Govee, it's 67. And I'm like, oh crap, they're going to throw up. This is no bueno, but it should be, if I play my cards right, it should go back up into the 70s. I think they'll be all right. It should go back up into the 70s tomorrow. So it should be all right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Those water pythons are tough, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But good stuff, man. The people are loving the Apodora stuff, by the way, in case you can't see the group chat.
Yeah, I can't. No.
Yeah, comments are on fire with the Apodora. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
they're amazing, and the babies are huge, man. Huge.
Awesome.
And Jeff and Kendra have talked about their time with theirs, and they were saying that they're just like ridiculously strong.
Yeah.
Like insanely strong.
Yeah, they're huge, and they're ridiculous because they use their whole body. Like they'll throw the middle of their body at something and try and get a coil there, and then their tail will be trying to get a coil. Like they'll just get like 3 different coils on you so that they can bite onto you or something.
Yeah. Our good friend Nipper in London, he has a pair, and he tried breeding them, and no luck. But he's working on it. But he now, after a recent show of force, he's perfectly fine. Nothing happened, but he won't clean the cage unless someone's in earshot, because like he's by himself, and I mean he's not a small guy by any means. I mean he's what 6'1", 6'2", something like that. But that thing's all muscle, and it will own him in a minute. So,
oh, dude, when we were moving here, I had an almost 14-foot female. I was packing up snakes, and she got me wrapped up. And I got her. What was that? I got her neck because she was trying to bite, right? And she had my arms wrapped up like this. and I had her by the neck, and she was squeezing so hard that she was making me choke her, but I couldn't let go. And my other hand was like folded back, like
Oh
my
God.
arm like that.
Oh,
And she was
hyperextension.
squeezing. And I was like that. I was fighting her for like good 15, 20 minutes to the point where I just panicked and ran upstairs out onto the street to find somebody to help me. My hand
Wow.
snapped. And my girlfriend at the time pulled up, and it even took her, like with the two of us, I don't even know, another 10 minutes to get this snake unwrapped. And she got it so far back that instantly, like as soon as she was off, my whole hand was purple and black, like just bruised. Like
Wow.
she literally almost snapped my hand.
Wow.
And there was no getting out of it. Like
Yeah.
those things. I don't let them get a hold of me like that anymore.
Yeah. That's tough, man.
Yeah.
Oof.
Worth it though.
Wild.
Yeah, dude. Super cool, man. This is a good show, boys.
It was.
I enjoyed this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah, man.
What is the best place for people to stay in the loop, or if they have any questions or get in contact?
Probably Instagram. I'm into snakes, not business and social media, so I could run things better. Basically, I keep it separate almost. Like I have Facebook, it's the Reptile Shop Red Deer, but that is basically just basic store stuff, and I respond to that during store hours. Whereas the Instagram page serves also as like my personal Instagram, so I'm more active on that. And that is what shows all like the more rare breeding stuff. And the Instagram is just the _reptile_shop. And with the Facebook or Instagram, you can search Codyjoe Mcewen, and it'll pop up on there too. And then I got to get back on it, but I started doing some YouTube videos too. And that's just the Reptile Shop Red Deer as well. And then I've done most of the Liasis genus on there too.
Nice.
Poplins.
Need to see all those chondros, man.
What's that?
So you need to show off all those chondros.
I
You
know.
just posted that good looking pair, man.
Oh, the blue and yellow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want something there.
Dude. Very cool, man. Very cool.
Well, this episode was brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out. Facebook, Instagram. Shop around. Use the code THN at checkout. Get 10% off your order. Save yourself on shipping. And then use the code THN at checkout on fullviewsapparel.com as well. New stuff getting uploaded and ready to go all the time. Check it out. Puget Sound Pythons, good friends in the Pacific Northwest. Give them a follow on all major platforms. And Cold Blooded Caffeine. You need that coffee. Stay awake. It's good. It tastes delicious and it energizes you greatly.
Warm yourself. It's cold this winter.
Right.
I'm wearing a hoodie.
I know. That's a big deal in itself.
But I'm also wearing basketball shorts and flip-flops, so it doesn't count.
Whatever works, buddy. As long as you're comfortable.
I am. It's a perfect what do you call it when a thermal gradient? That's what it is.
All right. Well, we'll be back THP on Thursday, I believe. I know a lot of people are itching for another second episode of Flippin' 10.
Yeah, when are they doing, like, what night are they doing that?
I don't know. So, I mean, they were talking about doing it like once a month. Honestly, if they wanted to do it more than that, like, it wouldn't bother me. Like, if I got a Thursday night off here and there periodically, I wouldn't be that upset about it. Because my other idea was they can do that, and then I can be pre-recording, ChondroCast episodes or something while they're doing the lives.
Yeah.
And help sort of even things out a little bit schedule wise.
Sure.
For me, but I did watch that first episode. I was there to help Jake with any technical stuff. Because he had never used StreamYard on his own or anything like that. So,
okay.
But it was really good. It was a really good show. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to do really well. Him and Sky do great. So it'll be good. Check it out.
Hell yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see y'all later.
Bye.